Hey, well, thanks. Yeah. By the way, who was here when we kicked this off a few years back? You were, yeah. Okay, you were like the one. Huh? Happened, man. Yeah. No, it's. I'm very, very proud of the progress here, and again, I cannot impress upon you more. This is all about public safety. Period. Full stop. And it's about dealing with reality cards that are dealt. And I do think the fundamental purpose is around answering the question, what kind of neighbor do you want when someone comes back home, comes back into the community from this system, which is one of the largest systems in the world, not just the United States of America. So we have an outsized role to play in terms of promoting progress and a different approach, a different mindset. And so now we've got the physical manifestation of that, and now we got to do the work. Now it's all about programming. It's all about proving ourselves, not just asserting this paradigm. And that's going to be a big part of this, data-driven focus, outcome-driven, and we will iterate. And so we've got folks out here and so many folks in the criminal justice reform space that will be monitoring the success of this or the failure. What we're promoting to hold us to a higher level of accountability over the next few years. And that's what I tell a lot of the folks that will be the beneficiary of these programs. We're counting on you. This is only going to be as successful as you are successful, and how you inspire other folks that may be in the yard but doesn't necessarily want to walk over to the library to join with their own rehabilitation and their own pathway back. So that we're here to answer any questions. Well, I think it's there's an intensity, having visited death row on multiple occasions and being there when with the condemned population, where hundreds and hundreds of the condemned population were not too long ago, and walking into one of the cells, which I did not do in the past, and trying to sort of square that reality, the largest condemned block, and as I said, in the Western Hemisphere, that's pretty intense. I did the moratorium on the death penalty because I couldn't kill someone else. I can't do that. It's state-sanctioned murder in that respect. You walk into the old chamber, there's literally a phone that says governor on top of it. I mean, when you see that, it's one thing to intellectualize that, and you're the governor. And the idea that that's the last phone call someone's going to make, and you say, execute, couldn't do that. Can't. I met with victims of some of the condemned inmates who said, you don't have the right to take the life of someone else in the name of my daughter. That really hit me. I'll never forget that meeting that I had before I made the decision. Others were very critical, and I'm deeply mindful of that, and there's grace in that as well. But I think, to me, that under Prop 66, we moved the condemned inmates out, and we're converting that into an honor facility, an honor yard. And that's symbolic and substantive. It's one thing, obviously, the kitchen and these facilities, but that, to me, hits home in a deeper, very human way.
Governor, in regard to social media restrictions that you may be pushing, are you concerned that enacting age limits will restrict teens' freedom of speech?
Yeah, look, as I said, we've got legislative pathways that we're processing. I had extended conversations with the Prime Minister of Spain. They're trying to answer those questions in advance. They've just proposed an idea. They're trying to figure out how to actually implement it. We were talking about the success and some of the challenges with representatives in Australia and how they enforce it. So there's a lot of complexity in here, including answering that question. So yes, across the board. But one thing I know, and I'll say it again, as a father of a 16-year-old and a 12-year-old daughter and two sons, this is the most anxious generation in history. They're less happy, they're less free, in many cases less confident, and I think there's a connection. And so I do think it's something that we need to consider, and I appreciate the leadership of the state. Going back years and years and years, we pushed the envelope, but we have more work to do. And so I'm looking forward to answering those difficult questions and processing this over the course of the next few months.
Eligible for these programs here at this new center?
No, I'll defer that to the warden in terms of the details.
Yeah. Hi, question one more time.
Just to make formerly condemned and LWOP inmates or any other classification inmates here at San Quentin that are not eligible for these services?
Life without parole is ineligible for this, but we hope to be the trendsetters. We're doing this to establish that we can make it work at any prison. So there's other institutions doing great things. Corcoran's got something going on. Valley's got something going on. This is just larger scale, so hopefully we can move it to other institutions.
So anyone below LWOP is eligible here?
Correct.
Governor, you guys said public safety starts here, right? The prisons, and you guys want the inmates, residents to be forgotten by the community, but just last year we saw how 2 inmates killed another inmate in Salinas State Valley. Salinas State Prison. He was stabbed 180 times. The video was leaked by a staff member, and it's seen or reproduced millions of times on social media. So what's being done to protect and ensure inmates and residents' safety inside state prisons and rehabilitation centers?
Well, this is a big part of it, but the warden lives this in a very different reality. Warden, maybe you can answer a little bit in terms of the approach you guys take and the challenges. You've seen it all, and you've not just been here at San Quentin.
I'll talk about San Quentin. What we know is humanity is safety. So when we reduce this versus us versus them mentality, that's what causes that. So you see a lot of retaliation. So we've seen our violence drop. We've seen our recidivism drop by offering more programs. So we know for a fact when we keep individuals busy doing positive things that they're going to be positive too. So the key is keeping your foot on the gas though. I think if we go back to the old ways, I think sometimes they put us against them, and we have this mentality that we shouldn't like each other, and that's not true. So it starts with places like this that show that we have common ground and humanity, and that will be safety for all.
Governor, your response to
And forgive me one second.
So my name's Eric Allen, juvenile lifer, work for the St. Quentin News. So I have a two-sided question for you. We see that there's physical changes happening here in this prison, but what is the long-term vision behind them, and what should success actually look like for someone serving time here 5 and 10 years from now? And how many of us, many of us are doing programming and education and rehabilitation programming work around here, and how is the efforts meant to translate into real outcomes like parole decisions, sentencing reductions, and early releases?
So I've got a lived reality where I can answer this question perhaps very differently than most. There's not a week that goes by where I'm not making parole decisions, and I individually read every single one of these files. It's hundreds and hundreds of hours. You talk about all these candidates for governor. I think that should be one of the litmus test questions. That never came up when I ran for governor. I didn't understand that responsibility. I didn't. It was an intellectual consideration, and it was a passing thought until those first rounds of applications showed up. In the past, governors have just simply rejected all the recommendations of parole. They didn't read one of them. That was very recent. The last governor was one who really started to shift in terms of that mindset, raised the bar in terms of expectations. But I'll tell you, for me, you raise the bar of opportunity to get released when I look first and foremost, I look at the programming. I look at in-prison behavior. First thing, if you've got 20 violations, I want to know how recent they are. I want to know if you've figured things out. I want to make sure you've debriefed from any gang affiliation. I want to know how many things you've enrolled in. I'm not looking for A's, B's, or C's, D's. I don't care. I care about effort and focus. And the challenge is so many places they don't have that opportunity. And so they're just stuck in limbo. Here now that opportunity becomes more abundant and people can prove themselves. And so I cannot impress upon you, as a governor the last 7 years doing thousands of these. There'll be another couple hundred in March that I will look at, including commutations, looking at pardons as well, but commutations in particular. I want to know you're committed to rehabilitation. I want to know that you're not been disciplined dozens and dozens of times. Doesn't mean you're immediately rejected, because God bless, the discipline comes in many different forms and circumstances. And so that's a huge part of giving people hope that they're not fixed and stuck on the basis of someone else's time clock. And so that's the mindset. That's what, to me, success looks like. More and more people gravitating to their own journey, their own personal reform. It's not forced on you, because then it's fake, man. If it's coerced, I don't buy it. And what I love about the East Block is what they're doing in the East Block, just to paint a picture, and this is not for anyone's edited attribution because no editors back at the studio could care. But those doors are going to be open from 6 a.m. to 8 p.m. And you got your own washing machine. You want your clothes washed, you wash them. You want to get something to eat, you can do it whenever. It's not right now. Everybody line up. You have to, and all of a sudden it's like you're starting to make decisions for yourself. Self-start. It's called life. It's a life a lot of folks have forgotten 20, 30 years later. And you come back home, you're like, well, why isn't someone telling me, where's my toilet paper? Well, no, you got to go buy it. And so that's the shift, and that's what we're bringing here. And so that, reentry starts here, man, in the mindset. You got to shift. So when you come out, you're at peak, man. It's like a sprinter running a 100-yard dash. You're at peak. You're not just starting up. And so, forgive me the long-windedness, but that's the way we've been thinking about this. And it's all about this California model. And we rolled that out about 7 years ago. I mentioned Valley State, and I don't want to diminish Valley State, but it's a point of pride. And I've been there on multiple occasions. We like the progress we're making there. But I felt like, God, we could do something bigger at scale. So we're trying to bring this throughout the prison system, and I hope whoever the next governor is committed to that. Take the baton. And again, be iterative. Have some humility. Something's not working, fix it. No one's fixing it. It's not an ideological endeavor. This is not left or right. This is just being smart and pragmatic. And I believe people are not the worst thing they've done. I don't think the worst thing. That's not who you are. The worst thing you did. And that's always been my mindset, man. And it's a belief system that sort of explains the why we're here and why we give a damn. Could have spent this money on anything else, man. And took a lot of grief. We still do. Why is he wasting money on these guys? Well, we get that all the time. But folks came here. I think they get it.
Governor, hey, thank you so much, first of all, for this follow-up opportunity today that you invited us back here. I remember.
Yeah, hold me accountable.
Well, thanks. So congratulations, and forgive me for two off-topic questions here. First, I want to give you an opportunity to react to the big news of the day from the U.S. Supreme Court ruling against President Donald Trump and his tariffs. Number one. Number two, this question comes from our CBS and NBC affiliate in Fresno. As for the changes you made to the CPUC, what is the vision you have for the California Public Utilities Commission and moving forward also on utilities and affordability in California?
Well, and I appreciate the question on the PUC. We just announced a new chair of the PUC. We also promoted his resume and his work to look at the issue of costs, particularly as it relates to electric bills. And that's our top focus. It's been a focus that was advanced with the Cap and Invest program, where we set aside $60 billion between now and 2045 for rebates for electricity bills. It also animated our regionalization, a plan that 11 years we worked on. We finally got it done. That will save over $1 billion a year in terms of ratepayer costs associated with regionalizing our grid and allowing more of our wind and solar to be exported when it's not needed in the state of California, and allow us more reliability of imports to address some of the variabilities and vulnerabilities in our grid. And so those were two proof points. But he wants to take it to the next level, really get under the hood at all of the additional costs that we've stacked up on the bills over many, many years. A lot of it well conceived, but no longer necessarily doing the job that they need to do, and how we can start to remove some of those burdens and some of those costs to claw back the cost of the bill. As it relates to the tariffs were illegal from day one. We were in Fresno. We were the first state. I was the first governor to announce the lawsuit with Attorney General Bonta on the illegal tariffs under the emergency authority that Donald Trump was asserting. Shocking to me that 3 members of the Supreme Court actually agreed with Donald Trump. There's nothing in the International Economic Emergencies Power Act that gives the President of the United States unilateral authority to impose a tax increase on ranchers, on farmers, on small businesses, on you and me. Donald Trump should return that money immediately. He has an obligation, $1,751 per family, that were taxed by Donald Trump. He took hundreds of billions of dollars from working folks, from the ag community, from small businesses, for this vanity play, this illegal action. And he finally was held to account. The rule of law won out. And what did Donald Trump do? He had a tantrum today. And he decided to tax you all again across the board, 10% across the board under some new authority. He's unhinged. Donald Trump is increasingly unhinged. Even his hand-picked Supreme Court said what he was doing was lawless. And I'll end on this, because this is important. It was a coercive policy that has produced what result? You saw GDP growth in the fourth quarter. GDP has now declined under the Trump administration. Unemployment has gone up under the Trump administration. Manufacturing jobs have gone down under the Trump administration. His entire theory of the case is falling apart. And this, the most regressive sales tax in modern American history. Finally, that will come to an end. Pay us back. Put that money back in the pockets of working families and the American people.
Last question.
Can you just talk a little bit about the metrics of success for this rehabilitation facility? You said, data-driven, but
Yeah.
Where will you gather that data? How will you gather it? Maybe the work.
Yeah, we have a whole team of folks. This is what they do in the advisory committee, and we got the district attorney here too, and she's all about data, and she's got some good. We never had the kind of data when I was mayor and Kamala was DA that you have in San Francisco. But talk about a little bit of that. I mean, you've got all the statistics on rehabilitation and what's working, what's not. But let's talk a little bit more specifically about what you both kind enough to be here expect.
Yeah, we are always tracking recidivism rates. We are looking at those who are parolees who are coming out and whether or not they are recidivating and ending up back in our system. How many parole violations? That is all data that we track. And while we may not be able to track it specifically out of this one center, we can certainly track it and do track it out of particular facilities and in our county. So those are all the things that we will continue to look at to see. Is the programming working? Are the support services and reentry services there that are necessary to help people be successful even once they are released? And so that is a big part of our metric to see if everything that we are doing is facilitating people being successful.
And Warren, you guys, talk a little bit more about how you guys measure success.
Well, we have a long road. We changed the name San Quentin State Prison to the San Quentin Rehabilitation Center in January of 2024, and now we have this building for more space, right? So being a rehabilitation center is our primary goal. So we want people to come here. First, we want to prove that San Quentin Rehabilitation Center is just that. It's the next level. It's the next step. And when you come here, you're ready to go home either on a parole board date or your release date, but you're ready to enter society. We have the Office of Policy and Research that collects all of our data, and we're continuing to look with other stakeholders to fine-tune that data.